this Li Hui asked me to actually give this sharing, and so I have to sort of think of how to approach this, okay, to share with you all about mindfulness in daily life. I think first of all, I would like to be clear that when it comes to mindfulness, that actually all of us we actually know that we are supposed to be mindful, right? But unfortunately, it is not very often that we are able to maintain it to a large extent because of the pace of life. In I think when life was slower, maybe even I recall when I was younger as a kid and all that, life was much slower, right? So we went about our daily life in a more, I would say, in a formal sense, a mindful way, but we are at least have more time to think and have more time to be present when we do something, right? And with the last 20 to 30 years, with the increase in the technology that we have, of course, we find that technology is useful, and that's why we are doing what we are doing now, right? We can do it on Zoom. Last time we have to meet in person. Okay, but also with this technology, we actually do have a problem because now there's no downtime at all. Everything that you do is immediate. That's one thing. So that doesn't seem to contradict. But the problem is it interrupts. There are many things that will interrupt your day. Constantly, you are interrupted by messages, by calls, by deadlines and emails and all that. And previously, like for example, if you want to send off a mail, you just write your letter, you would drop it in a post box, and nobody expects it to come until two weeks later or 1 week later. All right. But now everybody, the moment I press send, I expect a reply. Then I'll be like anticipating, holding my phone near me, I'm holding a phone, right? Trying to anticipate a reply. And because of all this ongoing sort of like, everything is immediate, right? Instead of being mindful of everything that's immediate now, is that it's actually distracting us a lot from what we are doing most of the time. So we are only partially present in the moment when we are doing something. We are usually still drifting around, whole day. You almost cannot concentrate on anything that you're doing now, unfortunately. Yeah. So the only time the people who have been to retreats and all that will tell you that, when they leave their phone at the door, they don't have to look at anything, don't have to answer emails, don't have to talk to anybody. That's the only time that they can be really truly mindful. Yeah. So unfortunately, this is the state of affairs now. We are not going to be able to, move the clock and change things and all that, right? So the main thing is that we need to, of course, work around it. And how do we work around this, right? And I think the very first thing that I would like to tell you is, of course, my own experience having a very short retreat, very short retreat, only 5 days in Myanmar. Nothing very spectacular from my point of view in terms of the location or whatever we go through. I'm sure every one of you who have been for retreats will have the same experience. But for once in our lives, we can leave everything behind. We don't have to think about phone calls, email messages, everything else in the world. You just drop and just go for your retreat. And what happens is that during that retreat itself, all we are told to do is to be aware of our breath. So the anchoring point is our breath. And when there are any distractions or anything that comes up, we actually have to just take note and let go, take note and let go, We just don't hold on to anything. And this went on for the few days that I was there at the retreat center. So you may think that it's very short. I went there only 5 days, nothing spectacular, as I said. The rest of the team there was like, I think people from Malaysia and all that were there for 60 days, I believe. Okay. So I did a chicken part of the retreat. Okay. But anyway, that said, at the end of the retreat, after 5 days, what I have to say that I experienced this very interesting state of mind, which was extremely clear. Everything was very clear. Everything like suddenly, like I don't need to wear glasses type of feeling, Suddenly everything is so clear. And everything somehow moves a little bit slower. Although you know the cars are still moving at the same speed, but somehow they seem to move slower. Every movement seems to be a clear frame, It's like as if you're watching a single frame of a film that's running through. Of course, people who are very young today don't understand what you mean by film running through in a cinema, right? Because now it's all digital, Yeah, but there are frames. So it becomes very clear that it's actually very slow. Yeah. So this experience is actually very valuable because this gives me a real taste about what it means to be fully aware in the moment, right? So having not experienced this in that form previously would have made it very difficult for me to describe that feeling, all right, or that sensation of being present and mindful, all right. So okay, now that's the background part of it all. Now, how do we actually apply mindfulness to daily life? Of course, I mean, we have studied Buddhism for a long time. We have practiced as a Buddhist, and of course, Buddhism, we always talk about, the practice of morality, the precepts, then after that, practice of meditation, and then mindfulness. Although it's very often crafted as a different, as if they are separate parts, lah, right? In terms of mindfulness, morality, and concentration. But actually, they are not actually that separate. They're actually one part of the whole thing. Okay, they're all intertwined. They're actually same, but not the same. Okay, now why I say same, not the same. Now, give you just an example. For example, if you were to actually be focused on an object and be concentrated on an object, all right. So those people who have, say, practiced breathing meditation and you're just focused on the breath, right? In breath, out breath, in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath, or the contact of the breath, or the rise of the abdomen and fall of the abdomen, or you have practiced one of the objects, like maybe a color, or maybe the Buddha, image of a Buddha. If you're a Tibetan Buddhist, you may have visualizations, etc., etc. What you are doing is that your mind is also focused at one object or one aspect of an object at a time. All right. You are not in a rush to gloss over things. You are actually focusing all the time at one object. So is that concentration or is that mindfulness? It's actually a combination, right? It's truly actually awareness, which is mindfulness at every point. But when you focus it without any other distraction, it is also concentration. Okay. So I think the separation is actually a little bit arbitrary. It's not really something that is a real separation. There's no real separation. For example, if you were to have a single object, say for example a color, say I want you to focus on say a blue color or a white light, for example. Then every object in your mind will be a white light or blue color. That means thought after thought after thought after thought. And then if you say that your mind becomes one-pointed, more and more focused, and as Buddhism, as Buddhists, we say that, oh, maybe, you attain some degree of jhana or whatever, then that is actually concentration, right? But being aware of the object moment to moment is actually mindfulness, it's awareness, all right? So trying to separate those two out is actually not very helpful and make people think that actually they are all separate issues, but they're not. Actually, they're the same thing. All right. The only difference is that when we say concentration, generally we mean focusing on a single object repeatedly. Like for example, apple, 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 apple. Right? Mindfulness is that you see the apple arises, the next moment maybe a pear, next moment maybe an orange, but you know every moment as they are. Okay. So both requires focus, both requires concentration. One is a repetitive nature of a same object. The other one is the object may be moving. All right. But they're essentially not different, It still requires focus. And when you focus like that, you actually calm the mind down. You actually suppress the hindrances. You don't get distractions. You don't get other funny thoughts coming in, right? And the better your mindfulness, the better your concentration is. All right. So again, I'm trying to point out here is that actually not that different. All right. Now, of course, how to tie into the third aspect, which is of course a practice of morality. I think this one people don't really see it like a direct correlation. But if your mind is always disturbed by thoughts that are actually unwholesome, right? Thoughts that bring about, regret, guilt, or there's something that's emotionally very strong, it is very difficult for you to actually settle down and let your mind hold on to one object or be present with one object, because your mind gets dragged away by these emotions very quickly. All right. So that's why all these things come together. When you practice, it comes together, and each of them reinforce each other. Okay. So that is the background first that I would like to start with. Now, how do we actually practice it in daily life? Of course, daily life, I would like to say that let's break up into different parts. One part of daily life is, of course, the things that you do at home, right? The very routine, almost mindless things, right? You get up, you brush your teeth, you eat your breakfast, you go to the toilet, you clean up the house, you do this or that, the chores and all that, right? So are these areas, I would say, devoid of opportunities? You see, so that's the question, right? So do you really just have to sit down in one place to be mindful, or do you think that you can actually make use of all these moments to be mindful too, right? That's number one. The other parts of your daily life would be your working life. Working life depends on your profession, what you do day to day. Every one of us, we do different things, right? Depends on your profession. So some of us will do more repetitive things. Some of us do analytical things, right? Some of us perform what we call technical skills, right? Like if you are like, for example, if you're a surgeon or a doctor of some sort, you sometimes you operate or you do certain procedures. Okay, so your working life. Okay, so your household life, your working life, and of course the third one will probably be in a way family and leisure. All right, family, so you have emotions. You take care of your kids, take care of your parents, take care of whatever that needs to be taken care of in terms of other people, and also your leisure time when you go and relax, you go for a holiday, you go and enjoy a sunset, you go for a cycling trip, you go for a jog, exercise, to keep yourself healthy. So the question is that if we look at all these aspects, are there opportunities for the practice of mindfulness? Actually, there are a lot. There are really a lot, all right? It's only how much you can, really put yourself through, in the sense that how much you can comfortably do without getting very fatigued about it. Okay. I remember very long ago, I read a book um, on practicing of mindfulness by one of, I can't remember the author, but it's a Thai monk a long time ago. So they say, oh, you have to be mindful, like about how to be mindful of eating. Every single step, you you lift up the spoon, you scoop the thing, you move to your mouth, and then you put it into your mouth. Then you feel the sensation of the taste of the food in your mouth. Then you swallow. Everything like that. So I did make an attempt one time just to try something like that. But even for a few hours, it was very exhausting. It was so exhausting, I can tell you. It's like as if I've like done don't know how much heavy work for the day, just for a few hours. You may have thought that doesn't sound like much, right? Just being aware, right? But no, because we are not used to it, right? We are not used to it. So how do I generally just apply this? Okay, so I think like all things else, like I will do normally what I say, do the low hanging fruits, things that are easy to do. Okay, easy to do. So for me, the things that are easy to do is that times when you're, for example, waiting for people or waiting for something, right? Rather than thinking about tomorrow, thinking about yesterday, thinking about who did this, who did that, or whatever. I mean, you can be actually be fully mindful and present, either with your breath, or even if you are looking around and your eyes are open and you see things coming and going. Visual objects are also good objects of mindfulness. They're fine, right? As long as you don't get dragged into a story. Okay. Like if you see somebody walk by, I mean, just notice somebody walking by lah, right? But more often than not, we're not like that, right? We see somebody walk by, then 1 million questions. Wow, the clothes so nice, the clothes so ugly, this one so fat, this one so thin, all this nonsense come in, right? Very quick. right? But if they do come in, it's a natural function of your mind, right? More importantly is to recognize that it's happening, right? Right. So I think a lot of people when you practice mindfulness and all that, we all think a bit too rigidly that it must be, you must sit in one place, you must only do this like a retreat center, that kind of thing. But when I came out of the retreat center and I saw everything moving by nice and slow and the mind was not running around, I see a car moving, it's just something moving, it didn't build a story, whether what car it was and all that kind of thing. I know it's possible. It's actually possible. All right. So in between moments, you can always have like short periods where we can practice mindfulness. Being mindful continuously is not going to be an easy task. But like all things else, it grows with time, lah. It grows with time. So the in between moments, I always find they are very useful to be aware and mindful, right? Similarly, when you go about your daily tasks and say, for example, when you put things around and all that, we have to try to be very mindful so that you don't keep on forgetting things. Actually, forgetfulness very often, other than medical causes of being forgetful, is often a symptom of being not mindful, right? Yeah. So like, for example, I have friends who are much younger than I am, whole day leaving things behind, they don't remember where they put their things, right? They go to the gym, then, he has left anything from a water bottle to a watch to his earpod, what they call it, his AirPods, you know, everything and anything you can imagine he has forgotten and he left behind. Okay, right? And it's a gym. You're going there to exercise and it's leisure activity. There's no pressure, so there's no excuse not to be mindful. All right. So even like in exercising, for example, you can be very fully mindful of every movement, all right, that you're doing, your actual posture, your muscles that are working, you feel it. Now, those of you who are doing yoga and all that, or have done yoga, you will know that your yoga teacher will probably nag you to death about being aware of your body. Okay, so in leisure activities like that, is where it is actually low hanging fruit because you have no stress to distract you. So actually, these are the times where, when the small little times of free time waiting for people, or you're doing leisure activities like sports, whether you go running or you go cycling or you go to the gym, you go for yoga, very beautiful opportunities to be aware. When I say to be aware means you be fully present in the moment. That means while you're trying to do your yoga, you don't go and think about going cycling or shopping after that. You know, I know a lot of people who go for a class and then after that, while they're doing the class, they're actually thinking about what to eat later, how to do this later. That's not being present. That's not being mindful. All right. And of course, we always think that mindfulness is like a specialty of the Buddhists, lah, but it's not really so. Lah. I think a lot of the other traditions have some aspect of it. Okay, like for example, when before I learned how to go for yoga classes, and I never thought that they would have talked about body mindfulness. But then after a while, I realized, hey, a lot of it, the whole day they're tell you, can you make sure you position like that, make sure you feel that your weight is being placed in this position, your hands is saying, you must know exactly where your hands are, where your legs are. That requires awareness, right? It's not about monkey see, monkey do. That's not practicing correctly. Practicing correctly is actually trying to be aware. And I'm not saying that you being aware you don't think. Actually, no, it's not true, right? But sometimes, personally, I always feel this is my personal view is that if you are learning something, like for example, if you're going to a class, right, or even for Buddhism for that matter, at least for that moment while you are there, when the teacher is trying to teach you something and trying to learn something, uh, leave all the baggage behind. Keep an open mind. They say do A, just do A, B, just do B. Okay? Just be with the moment and accept the thing in the moment. It's not that you cannot come back and review later whether this is correct, incorrect, suitable for me, not suitable for you. That's okay. But when you are doing it, it's not the time to start questioning about it. It's the time to be fully aware. So for example, I will use like a sports or yoga. When you're doing it, you have to be fully aware what exactly you're doing. So that if you're doing it rightly or wrongly, you should know it is rightly or wrongly, right? And if the teacher say, okay, no, you're not doing it like that, then you have to check exactly your whether you are actually positioned correctly, and so that awareness of your body is part of mindfulness also. Okay. A lot of people think that when you exercise or whatever, it is like, it's like a mindless event. Okay. Just go there, just run and like a hamster wheel, just run, that kind of thing. No, it's not like that. It's not like that. It can be made to be mindful. Imagine you're jogging. There's a regular pace, right? It's like breathing actually, right? So that jogging itself can be a mindfulness practice, right? Similar to cycling, every movement of the leg, up, down, push, up, down, push, that can be part of mindfulness practice. Okay, so all these things in terms of leisure activities are low-hanging fruit because nobody's going to judge you, nobody's going to pressure you, right? And there's no deadline. You already cut off that period of time for you to do this thing. So this is a very good opportunity for daily mindfulness if you put that into your daily routine. For those people who are not very, maybe don't have exercise as part of their routine, then even cooking, cutting vegetables can be important. In fact, there are many Zen stories of how the teacher actually advised the student to be mindful, right? When you're sweeping the floor, you sweep the floor, just sweep, right? You don't go and think all sorts of things. And say, what you do? Just go and sweep the floor. So you may think it's a mindless activity. No, being present at the moment, or the movement of your arms, your sweeping, the brush or the broom hitting the floor, all these things are opportunities. So is there a right object that you must notice? No, actually there isn't one. Mindfulness is just being aware, right? In the present. It is not about there's a right thing to be mindful about and a wrong thing to be mindful about. In fact, if you read in the Satipatthana Sutta itself, they will tell you that you have to know the mind as it is, right? You know, an angry mind as an angry mind, a lustful mind as a lustful mind, So you just know it as it is. And in fact, if anything at all, no judgment. Okay. In fact, once you start judging, then you end up with a problem because you'll be dragged into an emotional sort of roller coaster. Then there'll be guilt, there'll be like, dislike, hate, discomfort, all sorts of things. The story starts to build. All right. So one of the very most important thing about mindfulness in daily life is that one, you have many opportunities. Two, short periods of good mindfulness is better than long periods of attempted but poor poor attempts at mindfulness. In other words, you want to try to be mindful for 1 hour. When you can't even sit still, your mind drifting here, drifting there, when actually a good 10 minutes actually may have done a very good job. All right. So 10 minutes times 10 is already 100 minutes. Rather than trying 100 minutes one stretch, but you only achieve 10 minutes. Okay. So that one is not very effective, lah, right? So this is with respect to leisure or day-to-day routine activities. We can pick something. For a start, we can always pick something and find it useful. Okay, so every one of us are different. So what I'm trying to suggest is that we can actually pick things that we like and things that we are likely to be able to achieve. All right. I think sometimes people have an obsession of doing things that are difficult. Okay, it's not that you don't challenge yourself, but when you're starting, cut yourself some slack. Okay, give yourself some things that you can definitely achieve, right? And then you encourage yourself to do more. All right, so that's important. Now, of course, in the formal Buddhist meditation, we always all practice of mindfulness. We always say anchor on the breath. Yeah. So if for any reason there's nothing that interests you at that point, then anchor on the breath lah. It's quite easy one, right? It's always with you, so that's also possible. Now, the other next thing is of course to come to work. When it comes to working, when we are working, and how do we practice mindfulness? Because working sometimes can be pretty hectic. We're rushing around, and I can only speak from my own angle lah, where we as doctors we deal with sometimes quite complicated situations and sick patients or emergencies. Yeah. In fact, ironically, a routine patient who is well gives you less impetus to practice mindfulness because you tend to be very relaxed. You then start to talk nonsense with your patient, that kind of thing. So you actually tend to drift off into a sort of more mindless state, right? Now, if we deal with a very sick patient and we are there to make difficult decisions and your mind is working very intensely, evaluating data and all that, to be able to look at the data and evaluate data, it actually has to requires mindfulness. All right. Because if I see 10 different blood test results and I'm supposed to make sense of them, I have to be aware, right? If I'm not aware, the moment I leave the page one, I will forget about, I'll be forgetting about page one, right? Then I will look at page two, then I forgot about page one. Cannot be, right? So once you note it, you know it. When you know it, it adds on to your awareness, right? And so that's how we do it. But another thing that I find that's extremely useful for mindfulness in working is that like in a tense situation, like for example, for us, sometimes emergencies and all that, especially for my kind of work, I do deal with very, very sick patients, all right? And when things happen, they can happen so fast, right? Very, very fast. And I have to make very quick decisions, okay? Quick decisions, and I have to remain mindful and not panic. In fact, mindfulness actually is an antidote to panic. Okay, not many people realize that because when you panic, actually your mind runs in all sorts of directions. You lose control of your awareness of your thought processes, and therefore you lose your ability to think. In a way, you lose your ability to think, right? Now, every one of us have encountered situations where something happened and we panic. Try to recall exactly what it is, but unfortunately, most of us, because of the nature of panic, and we lose mindfulness, we don't have very much recall of the details. We only recall the things that drive us to the panic, all right, and the very big things that happen. Like for example, for us, like for me, if when I actually have a very sick patient or I have like give anesthesia and and I have a situation where like I put a patient to sleep and then I need to put a tube in for a patient to breathe and what if I encounter something that I can't put in the tube, all right? Patient can die on me, right? Can die on me. So for a lot of people, my friends and colleagues now that I've spoken to many people about it. The reaction is always very different, and what goes on in their mind is very different. So a lot of people, rather than be present in the moment, so that you see exactly what you're supposed to see, do what you're exactly supposed to do because you know every step that your hands are moving and what you're doing. A lot of them run into a panic. They start to think about what if the patient dies? Somebody's going to sue me. You know. In fact, it's the wrong thing to think at that point in time, right? But they can't help themselves because fear overtakes them. So, and they are not aware that they are actually sabotaging their own performance by letting this happen and run wild. In fact, if they had been just focused on the task, most of us are obviously competent enough to get the job done, right? Or at least we know all the alternatives. Also recognizing the fact that sometimes things cannot be done, what to do, really cannot be done. But despite that, many people run into panic situations. So when they run into panic situations, there is loss of mindfulness. There's a loss of awareness of the situation there. In fact, they are lost in a flurry of emotions and things that pull them all over the place. So if you actually ask them exactly what went through their mind, you will find to your horror that actually not the problem solving, but their mind was mostly overcome by fear, right? So they were not present. In other words, if there was an option that was looking at them in the face, they may not have noticed it because they were not aware, right? So they will have just rely on old reflexes, reflex motion. Okay, so it's your fight and flight response that actually takes you away from it. So the training of mindfulness in daily life actually modifies your fight and flight response, so that even in the situation is extremely nasty, very bad for you, you can still use your awareness to make sure that everything remains crystal clear and everything is uh, you can see everything as it is so that you can make sound decisions. All right. Now, the other thing, of course, is the learning and training of a skill in your work. If your work involves some technical skill, because when I was teaching my juniors last time, there were a lot of opportunities to see different trainees and all that. Some of them are, of course, very gifted lah. The hands are very good. You show them one time and they know how to do. Then there are others, you show them so many times, but still cannot do it, right? And then if you talk to them, you ask them why, what is it? Then you see as they are doing it, you also notice the pattern. They are not present. right? The mind is worrying about the theory, how this is supposed to be done. It's almost analogous to the story about the person being shot by the poison arrow. Instead of taking out the arrow, right, they're thinking of who shot the arrow, what color the fellow's skin, whether the arrow made of this or that. So the similar situation occurs. It's actually the same problem, right? So instead of being present and following the steps as you are trying to guide them through, they are thinking of all sorts of funny questions that are not relevant to the moment, right? So they are not present, and when they're not present, even though their hands may be doing it because you are telling them to do it, they actually didn't learn the skill well, because they don't remember the parts of the skill, because half the time the mind was somewhere else. All right. So in terms of learning new skills and even the work and all that, this is actually very important, but people don't realize it, and especially important for doctors who are especially today, because we have, I mean, they have less patience to sort of practice on, in a sense, So last time, you have so few doctors, a particular procedure. As a doctor, as a trainee doctor, you could easily have gotten 100 patients to do, but now maybe you only get 30 patients. So you have to be very present so that your hands and your skills are really good, right? So every moment that you are there, you have to make the best of it. And the only way you can make the best of it is to be present, not to be thinking here, there, and everything else, right? So, so this is just another aspect of work where mindfulness in our daily lives actually make make a lot of difference. All right. Yeah. This is okay. So I already dealt with say maybe leisure activities. I've dealt with like certain home routine activities, bit of work, training. Maybe perhaps work and training. I should also mention studying. I don't know whether there are any students here, but studying is a chore all of us have to go through lah. It is unfortunately, the exams are necessary evil. We all understand. I mean, as we grow up, we all realize exams just a necessary evil. Doesn't mean anything. You pass or fail. Unfortunately, people use that to judge you, but the reality is it doesn't really tell you how good you are. Right? We all know. Okay, so how does mindfulness apply to studying, like to students and all that in daily life? Now again, it's like the trainee who is actually doing a procedure, while they're supposed to be studying or they're supposed to do a procedure, they're thinking of all sorts of things. Similarly, I've also encountered a lot of my friends who are like my juniors who are actually studying, and they're always telling me, I got no time, I got no time, I got no time, right? I need to stay back and study. I need to do this. I got no time for this. I got no time for that. No time to attend Dharma talks. Yeah. So, so I thought I said, what do you mean by no time? Yeah, no time. But then you realize that when they are sitting down or they are supposed to be studying, um, just as they are texting you to say that they are busy and they want to study, at the same time also you'll see them sending you like random forwards of posts from Instagram and all that. Then it's like, what are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be studying? Right? So you can see they are not present. That means while they are looking at the book or they're looking at something they're supposed to learn, they're thinking about something else. Okay, so that's not being present. So this is again where mindfulness is very important, right? When you're studying, you study. So I always advise them, I said, when you want to study, very simple. You just have to decide. When you want to study, you just study. But if you must make sure that you also understand your limitations. Not all of us can concentrate beyond 1 hour sitting down studying, right? So some of us, all of us got different cycles. So some of us 25 minutes, 30 minutes. Some of us 1.5 hours. Some of us can sit like a rock down there for 3 hours, right? But of course, doesn't mean that 3 hours is very fruitful. A lot of times not fruitful. Okay. Yeah. So on the average, I think most of us is like 45 minutes to an hour and a half. We can sit down and study and be fully focused. And what do I mean by fully focused? Most people don't even know what that means, right? But I always tell them, if you're playing a computer game or you're playing like you are reading a novel that you like, right? Don't you find that time passes very fast and you know every detail of what words they use and this and that, everything that right? So it is actually, your awareness can be very good if you want it to be. It's just that in general, you you just don't have the discipline because already decided that it's a chore, you don't like it. So you allow your mind to run wild instead of making an efficient 1 hour study so that you can get a efficient and enjoy a 1 hour break, right? You try to do a 2 hour study, but you actually got out also 1 hour or less. You see, so it doesn't work out, right? So it becomes inefficient, and because of lack of awareness, and awareness is actually a very big part of memory. If you're aware, you will also have very good memory in general. Okay, you won't forget. All right. So so like I think we all know, right? People always say, oh, work hard, play hard. Yeah, essentially that's it, right? When you're supposed to work, you work. Supposed to study, you fully concentrate and be with the moment. But when you're playing, you don't go and think about, oh, I'm feeling guilty. I want to study. No, you want to when it's time to play, you just play. When it's time to study, just study. Don't think about playing. When it's time to eat, just eat. Right? And when hunger arises, you just know hunger, all right? And you say, okay, I need to finish another half a paragraph. You finish it and you eat lah. No point trying to stretch yourself and then every 10 minutes or 5 minutes, the thought of hunger keeps coming in your head. No point. You're not going to be able to focus, right? And there will be a break in your mindfulness and you'll be drifting off thinking of what to eat and how to eat and how your stomach is growling and what have you. So all this comes into the picture as part of mindfulness practice. Although it's actually a very routine day-to-day thing, nothing very fantastic, nothing hi-fi, no need to sit in a monastery to do. But it's there, for us to do. It's there for us to take the opportunity to do. Right? Now, so with that, actually, I would have covered actually quite a wide range of activities, right, in the daily life that you can actually, sort of have mindfulness in your daily life and apply it frequently, right? In different aspects. Just imagine in a day, a routine, I would say a sort of a typical day, right? You can pick one for your household or your daily activities at home. You can pick one for activities at work. You can pick one for your exercise or leisure activity, right? Already how many opportunities, at least 4 times already in a day, that you can actually practice almost formally, practically formally. You know what I mean? So as I said, not in the typical way that you think that you have to sit down and and just sit quietly in the corner, right? But I can assure you, many times when we sit down in the corner, not all of us are mindful anyway. We just appear to be sitting. That's all, right? Yeah, it's just appearances, right? Now, I think the other thing about practices of mindfulness and all that, we also have to be aware that it's not a competition, right? The endpoint is not for anybody to see. It's only for you to know. Right? It's only for yourself, right? It's not a competition. So, and also there is no such thing as I got more mindfulness. I very sad lah. Okay, I got more mindfulness. No, you got less mindfulness than me. No, I don't think that's the whole idea. But I think as a community, we just have to encourage each other. And if we ever find something that can trigger more mindfulness, right? An activity or an opportunity to bring it up for people to practice, we just do it lah. We just encourage each other. Like my very forgetful friend, I always tell him, I said that, you just have to learn to be more mindful. So you just have to be aware exactly when you do something, you just don't rush around from point A, point B, We always joke with them that you got ADHD, so you cannot settle down whole day running from one thing to the other, And I said, no, just be aware. At every step you do, you be aware so that you will not forget. And even if you have forgotten and said you left it there, because of your awareness of all the steps that you've gone through, you can trace it backwards. In fact, this is what has been described in Buddhist texts, right? You actually can trace your thoughts back all the way if you want, you know and you can even remember that, okay, now like that I was there, I put this here, the next step I was there, I move in this direction, I move in this one. You only can know that if you're aware. If you're not aware, you don't remember which road you pass, and right, which corner you put your thing down, you will never remember. But if you're aware, so these are small little things you can do to test yourself whether your awareness has been has been applied to the situation, when you can actually trace back something. And then trace back, I say, okay, like, I mean, it's not that we haven't dropped things before or lost things. I mean, I've dropped things like, I've dropped very small things before, like my glasses, the screw, I dropped it before at the shopping center. Can you believe it or not? In some busy shopping center. All right. So we use our awareness to try to remember where we are feeling. So your mind had to retrace step by step by step by step. So if you had not had the awareness of the things that has gone through to some extent, I won't say it was very good, but to some extent, yeah, you will not be able to say go back to a place where you know that this was the last place that you last saw it. You know what I mean? So that's the only thing you need to know, right? So you can actually trace back into exactly the vicinity, Of course, the school job you may not have seen where it went, but you know the vicinity roughly where, and you can still look for it, and you can find it actually. Okay. So all these things you can use to gauge, right? So if you every time forget and you really have no clue where you dropped it or left it, chances are you were not mindful, right? So need a bit more work, need a bit more work. Okay. So so the other thing that I just want to briefly touch upon today, okay, is that this about mindfulness movements that we have today. Today, mindfulness is such a big thing. Everybody talks about it. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it today. Yeah, I'm just going to just briefly say that everybody's trying to teach people how to be mindful. They go for courses and all that, right? But actually, it's nothing very high flying. It's actually quite boring in a way because it's something that everybody can do. Yeah. But I think just be aware that actually Buddhism has had this technique for the longest time, and maybe some of the Indian traditions also have had it the longest time. Yeah, but it's also mindfulness practice is also something very, very unique to Buddhism, in the sense that the emphasis on it is very, very strong. And why is it very strong, and why is it that Buddha recommended mindfulness? So much more, put so much more importance in just concentration per se. It's because with mindfulness of your thought processes, mindfulness of your intentions, your emotions, you do understand yourself a lot better. And when you understand yourself a lot better, you can also learn how to deal with your own mental issues. Because a lot of things today in the modern world, unfortunately, we always think it's external factors, right? But what we have forgotten that we are part of the external factors because we interact with the environment. And due to our interaction, we can choose to react in a whole many ways of reacting to it or responding to it. You see, and if we are not aware of our own processes, we do not know what triggers a certain reaction, and everything is a reflex, everything is a fight and flight response, then we'll tend to make more bad decisions. We overreact. We end up having a lot of psychosomatic problems. Yes. So you don't realize that sometimes you have diarrhea because it's not because of food, it's because of stress. You have bloating and all that, what we call irritable bowel and all that, all stress related, right? Although medical science has started to recognize it more and more, but it somehow hasn't trickled down to the public or the people in general to say that um, the mental processes can cause a lot of other problems, and the only way to solve it is not drugs. Okay, in the Western world, every mental problem, everything also there must be a pill to take to solve the problem, right? In Buddhism, if it's a problem, it's actually rooted in our thought processes. Awareness is the key to how to deal with it. Okay, so that's the most important thing. I think for today, I think I'll stop at this. Okay, the next time around, maybe we'll talk a bit more about what's going on in the current mindfulness movement, and also a little bit more about maybe a sort of case study about how things can be, how it has been applied to people with anxiety disorders. Yeah, and my own personal experience, like helping out friends and all that with some anxiety or depression or whatever. So that's application. Okay, now I think we probably can go on to some questions if anybody has anything.
Yeah, okay. So anyone has any question, you can unmute yourself and ask Dr. Tan.
I don't seem to be able to see anybody. Okay, now I can see. Good.
Anyone has any question?
Anything can go. Don't worry. Just ask. Even it sounds weird, never mind.
Hi, Dr. Tan. Thank you for sharing tonight. It would be great if you could help to shed some light on two questions which I have. So the first is, how would you use Buddha's teachings in the management of a team which you are in charge of? Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah. And do I say the second question too?
Yeah, just say maybe it's related.
Okay. And the second one is, how do you keep your calm when your to-do list is always filled up by others, like last minute requests and having to cope with like non-delivery of things by your colleagues? For example, they are supposed to come out with a report and you find that the person goes on MC for the next 3 days when it was due. Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
that one's a tough one. Okay, first one about how you're managing a team. Okay, I think team management, really depends on the type of team, right? Because for me, I only can speak from a point of like medical teams and all that. So we work with nurses, and all the paramedical staff, right? Uh, nurses and paramedical staff are a little bit different from other fields, right? They are in a way used to a very, very taxing environment where people can appear unpleasant to each other, but are not really unpleasant. All right. So, but I think more importantly is that when we deal with a team, we have to we need the awareness or mindfulness of not just our own reactions to people, but also to try to use that same reflection of our own thoughts and feelings and try to actually sense what the other side is trying to or is concerned about. Okay. Now, sometimes, like for example, especially maybe not today in Singapore, I mean, our local context maybe less so, but maybe in some overseas, like more countries, sometimes it's a bit more where people don't want to say the bad thing, right? Or want to be Mr. Nice Guy, right? So they will not tell you as it is, but they will go one big circle, go round and round and around. So sometimes you just have to see what the person is trying to do. So is the person actually trying to give something constructive, but refuse to say it hard and in a harsh way because they think they will look bad, right? So I think if you're a team leader, then I think sometimes you should just invite it. Just invite it. Just say, okay, so are you actually thinking about this? You don't say are you saying this and very confrontational, right? So are you concerned about this? And this is where you have to read your own emotions and see that, make sure that you must, if you are reacting, you must be careful that your mind is not drawn into a sort of like emotional sort of roller coaster, before you answer. So if you say, okay, this one, say like that, okay, I know he's not really meaning this, but the thing, so you can actually, in a way, call his bluff lah. So you just say that, okay lah, if you're thinking like that, is this your concern, then okay, maybe we can actually, can you just lay it out, then we can deal with it, So it's only possible if you can sense the intention, right? And sensing the intention is also interesting because as you actually practice mindfulness for yourself, you sense your own intention. So you also learn that people are not very different, People are all the same. All right. If you feel like that because of something, they will also feel like that because of the same thing. Okay. It's only how you respond that is going to be different. It means your choice, your choice. Okay, so you can be triggered by something, like for example, if the fellows want to say something, say, okay, this is not being done correctly, but the fellows don't want to say it, that this is rubbish, your suggestion is nonsense. The fellows say, oh, maybe you don't consider this or not, maybe this one can be done like that, or why don't you try this? Then you just say, okay, so you have to sense the intention, right? Because sometimes intention is good. When the intention is good, then you just bait the information out loud. You say, okay, if I were in that position, wanting to suggest and not hurt the feeling of another person, so that's how the guy will ask me, right? So I respond accordingly by asking him to elaborate in a nice, non-confrontational way, in my tone, to tell that I appreciate the suggestion or the input, and I'm willing to keep it open and then let you deal with, let's discuss it. All right. But doesn't mean that in one thing which I'm very strongly against is that in some Buddhist circles, we tend to be very passive. We tend to be pushovers. Okay. Don't want to be confrontational, don't want to be bad guy, No, cannot let people step on us. No, it's not that. It's about being firm, right? You can invite it out, and then in fact, if anything at all, you have to build the environment where the conversation is not personal. It's very, it's because you appreciate that they are trying to do something to help the situation, right? But not everybody is very tactful. Not everybody knows how to put it across nicely. So the moment you sense that, and the sensing of these things, actually, a lot of it has got to do with your own ability to understand yourself. Because if you understand yourself, you can sense, right? If you don't understand yourself, then or if you yourself, if you always feel threatened, you will tend to react badly. You only know it when you yourself are aware that you're always feeling threatened. That means the problem may lie with you. Then when somebody suggests, you always feel very like uptight already, That means the problem may lie with you. The person may have a good intention, but if you feel you don't realize that you're being threatened and you are responding from a threatened point of view, then the situation will escalate and it will get bad, right? But it can always be turned around. If you're aware, oh no, this one is it's hitting me a raw nerve. Okay, but maybe the intention is not like that. Take a step back, then you deal with it. That will be okay. All right. Now, the other thing about people not doing work and all that, that's a tough one. I think that's more a management issue. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say work attitudes have been really good everywhere. You have all sorts of workers, right? All sorts of workers, right? But sometimes we have to ask them. You also have to ask them whether they do truly have problems, truly have problems. And you can sense it. Again, sensing yourself and sensing others is very important. As I said, we all function on similar things. Things that provoke joy in you provoke joy in them. Things that provoke anxiety in you will provoke anxiety in them, to a large extent. They're going to be the same. They're not going to be any different. All right. So you have to see the cues of these things that you yourself will know that will provoke anxiety or you to act in certain ways. Sometimes people take MC because they bo pian, they have no choice because they don't know how else they're going to do this, right? So they just run away and do it. And that's a very bad habit in our current modern day society, is that people tend to run away from things, right? They just run away. I can't solve, I run away. I can't solve, I just hide away. And I hope that somehow miraculously somebody else will solve the problem for me. Yeah. So sometimes this kind of thing, as I said, once you sense it, then you see a lot of times I think when people have problems like that, I mean, there are of course a few people who will just be, super bad attitude lah. There will be lah. I can't deny that there will be. But a lot of people actually do have problems. They do have problems, and you'll be surprised. The amount of problems that people have today is really quite scary. It may not be financial. We always think financial is of course very top of the list, but sometimes household emotional problems and all that actually do run them down quite a lot. Responsible people become irresponsible because they cannot deal with their own emotions. And these people sometimes, once you find out what it really is, you ask them to basically, if they feel the warmth, they will come clean. When they come clean, you can actually deal with it. But of course, the stress on you how to solve the problem, right, is to actually, as I said, find out the cause. Because the more important thing is not about that episode, right? The more important thing is that it's repeated, right? The episode, you can't do anything. You just have to solve it anyway, right? But it's when it gets repeated, because the person, you cannot deal with that means, in other words, the person say, okay, I got family problem, I have to do this. Then if you find out and you just ask them to explain, then you say, okay, fine, we'll try to see whether we can solve this for the moment, or we help you solve it, or we give you some time, so we won't rely on you to do these things, right? And you just tell us what you can do, with this capability. There will be some people who unfortunately will have emotional things that will hit them suddenly, and then they really cannot do anything. Then sometimes a bit of counseling to find out how they feel, and whether they need any support emotionally or counseling services or whatever, right? Because I know a few people who are actually very otherwise very responsible, hardworking people, but somehow cannot work properly, right? Because of emotional things going on at home, and then they can't work properly. So they try their best, but it doesn't come out right. And then when they cannot cope, they get discouraged, and the only way they deal with it is run away. Right? So they throw MC and run. Okay, that's the thing. Of course, okay, the other thing is, of course, financial. Sometimes they got financial and then they are like double, doing triple jobs and whatever. They're very tired, they cannot cope, and next day they just, drop dead and they just cannot do anything, right? So they leave work undone. Uh, that one also, as I say, once you find out, you'll be able to deal with it, and then maybe it's not always that we can provide a solution that is good for them. But we also have to be frank sometimes to be able to tell them that, the job requires a certain level of things that has to be done. What we can give, in the sense that what we can allow a little bit of slack, and what we can't, right? Some things are time sensitive. You can't have slack. Those are not time sensitive, whatever lah, Like, I mean, I have my own staff that we work with and all that, right? Yeah, I mean, I've had efficient ones, I've had super inefficient ones, right? But I always tell them, I said, the more important thing is the things that need to be done urgently, just get it done, right? There are things that are so-called P2 lah, not so important lah, right? Yeah, that one you take your time. Just, I'll let you know which one is more important, so that you make sure that you try to do the things that are important first. Not so important, we give you a bit more slack, and until you solve your problem. Again, all this also it's about giving chances lah. About giving chances. But if cannot help it, if some of them are recalcitrant and can't be helped, then you have to be stern lah. But again, the intention is not supposed to be something that you have to really examine your own intentions, whether you are just it's a practical thing that you really have to do, because a job has to be done, right? The job has to be done. So you cannot say that I so kind to the point that I just pay you for nothing. It cannot be, right? If so you have to be firm at other times now. If I say I'll try to help you solve the problem, I'll give you modify whatever if necessary for a period. But if you really cannot, then you may have to need to find another job, because I can't help you there, because this job has to be done. Right? It cannot be that for your problem the company fails in the services. Also cannot be, right? That's also not right, right? So I think when you talk to them, that's where awareness comes. It's how it has to come across. Because if you are aware of your own intentions and you are speaking your mind, that means it's truthfully as you feel it, right? Not out of anger. So you have to be careful. So sometimes when the word comes out, it's because out of anger. Then the other fellow, the moment the fellow finds out of anger, the fellow goes into, just goes into the cocoon, and hides out, right? So it doesn't work. So this is where mindfulness is important. And when you're dealing with people, actually, a lot of it is mindfulness within your own head lah. So what's going on and how you sense and how you react, so that you're always using your mindfulness to double check your intentions as to how and why you react in a certain way before you let it go. You know what I mean? Yeah, and I think that's where I find that is helpful lah. It doesn't mean that cannot scold lah. Need to scold, can scold one. I think a lot of Buddhist thing must be so good quite quiet. Cannot scold people. Yeah, cannot sack people. No lah. The world has to run. Right? I think in the life story of the Buddha, I think there were numerous times that Buddha also don't take nonsense. Don't take nonsense. You tell them off. Right? Yeah. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Dr. Kenneth, that's true. That's one of the issues. I tend to be like the nice person. So when things don't get done, it's like she will come in and settle things for us, because this one is actually setting exam paper, cannot wait. The students need the exam result. So it's like she will just scoop up and finish up the thing. And then also I find that when I have to do this kind of talk, like you said, how it comes across, and to tell that person I'm actually not too comfortable to tell them of this issue, you need to hand in on time. Yeah. So when you have this nice person persona, it becomes, don't worry, she will understand you. She's very kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Sometimes people take advantage, you see. So I think being firm is also important. As long as you know your intentions, it's not there to hurt the person, but you just to get a job done, right? It's not personal. It's really not personal, It's just to say, I need the job done, right? Because this one, there's no way around it, you see. And if you really cannot, please let me know early so that I can solve the problem somehow, right? Rather than you leave it to the last minute, then just don't pass out the thing, you see. That kind of situation. I think when they can sense that you're really trying to help the people, at the end of the day, you have to be a certain kind not to feel paiseh lah, right?
Yeah, I think so. I feel paiseh, then never mind, I settle it.
Yeah, but they also will feel paiseh if you already tell them. No, I think the most important thing is that once you know your intention, you can tell them that I know that you may be feeling stressed or you may be feeling anxious, but
So like an association for people with like basically it's a research organization they have to come up with policy papers on how we can better serve people with ADHD, and I think there's a lot of deadlines and a lot of
mm,
changes that she needs to make because she's dealing directly with the government, and they're quite iffy about things sometimes. So this,
mm.
and she has been telling me about how stressed she has been, and she hasn't been sleeping very well.
Okay, I think that I mean it's not strictly a mindfulness problem, but I mean it's a common stress related problem. Okay, common stress related problem. A lot of people have this, but I think okay, this one my general advice for most people is that they have to come to terms with what is under their control and what is not under their control. All right. And this again, mindfulness is can be applied in a way because if you're aware of your thoughts and you are aware that you are actually sort of pressuring yourself to do something that is not totally under your control, right? So that is a problem, right? That's a problem. In fact, a lot of very high achievers are like that, right? They think they can control the world. That's the problem. And because they do not recognize the reality that there are limitations in them in both the environment and themselves, that they cannot control the world. I always tell my very type A friends, I said that, you have to recognize one thing is that you just ask yourself, examine all the things that you do and the things that you're doing, and examine all the factors that are affecting the situation. And you tell me how much is it that you are actually contributing. So a lot of them, unfortunately, have a very uh, un, unrealistic sort of gauge of how much they're contributing. I'm not saying that they are not doing work, but the reality is that okay, say for example, you're going to submit a proposal, like okay, for services and all these things, right? Yeah, I know it's tough. I also don't like this type of thing, this type of thing is very difficult, right? But all said, um, if you look at it, you only can plan so much, all right? You can only suggest so much. How the thing is going to turn out, nobody will ever know because there are 9,909 million other factors that you cannot control. And that realization has to come. Because I think a lot of very type A people, the problem is that they are so used to having control over things, or at least the illusion of control. I wouldn't say they have control. It's an illusion of control. Actually, there's no control, right? Even for medicine, we always say, oh, people think, all the public always say, oh, but doctors should be able to solve the problem. No, actually, we only do such a small thing only, right? 99% of the things we have no control over. All right. Let me just give you a very simple example of this. Like, okay, for example, if you say a very sick patient, they say, okay, oh, you go to the ICU, you can treat them, you got all the antibiotics, you got ventilators, you got dialysis, you got blah 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 blah, 1,001 things. And you see, I watch on TV, I watch and see on YouTube, I see on Google, so many things can be done, right? But what they have forgotten is the body is not yours. The body is somebody's. The body can is determined by multiple factors, right? Determined by the genetics, dependent on the age, dependent on the environmental exposure, and then the response to treatment depends on on the on the individual factors. Like for example, medicine A works for person A but might not work well for person B, right? Similarly, I put a person on 10 people on the same treatment, maybe one will survive or 9 die. Okay, you see, so some doctors are also very stressed. How why patient die, why patient die? So my answer to it is very simple. Just first of all, learn to recognize that you are not the sole reason of the success or failure of anything. In fact, you only play a very small part. So don't kid yourself. You play a small part. And how to know it? The only way to know it is to actually analyze it objectively and examine all the factors, list down all the factors that actually would lead to the success or failure of a particular project or proposal, and then look at yourself. What are you actually doing, and what is your mind telling you about the factor? Is your mind telling you that just because you made one mistake, the whole thing will fail? Or if you just did not make one mistake, the whole thing will be a great success? In fact, is your mind playing tricks on you? All right. If you can actually come to terms and notice that your mind works in a way that is not in sync with the reality, then you will be highly stressed. Okay, that's number one. Okay, this is to deal with the stress and how to look at reality, so that I always say you only control less than 1% of the outcome. All right, so don't kid yourself. All right, you need to control less than 1%. Now, number two is that, yeah, still stress, never mind. So how do you actually decrease the stress? Of course, understanding is one. Number two is that, are there relaxation exercises that can be done, right? Yeah, of course there are. But a person who is highly stressed is going to find it even more stressful to try to relax, because relaxation is also a stress. Now, I cannot achieve relaxation, so I'm more stressed. Have you ever tried forcing yourself to sleep when you can't sleep? It gets even worse, right? It just gets worse and worse and worse. So it's very ironic, but that's the way it is. Okay? Alamak, why I can't sleep? I can't sleep. Tomorrow I need to wake up early. I can't sleep. Then the more you cannot sleep. The moment you let go is okay, you sleep. Okay? So it's the not letting go that's the problem. So as I said, first of all, recognize the reality, learn to let go. Right? Now, meditation and mindfulness is very useful, but it is what I call prophylaxis. It's like a vaccine. You take when you're well. You don't take when you're almost falling apart. It's not going to work. Okay? That is why I left this to the last thing I'm suggesting here. All right? So personally, I will always recommend people to learn meditation and learn how to relax and let go when you are not under a stressful situation. In other words, before you jump into something stressful. So you have that skill that you can make use of during a stressful situation, because you already know how to do it. But learning it when you're in the stressful situation is extremely difficult. In fact, if anything, it adds another layer of stress to it, and then it becomes even more messy. All right. Last but not least, of course, comes medication for short-term medication, right? But I think that should be the last thing that we should ever consider. That is a very, 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 very Western thinking. Everything you can pop a pill and then solve the problem. All right. My friends have got anxiety. 2 people were offered pills very readily, okay, by their doctors. Right. I told them, I said, no, are you willing to try something without? Right. And what did I try? I basically tried by making them recognize that, the source of their stress. And how do they recognize the source of their stress? Is to look at their own minds. What triggers the stress? What are the things that trigger the stress? A lot of times, the triggers of stress is very nebulous one, because you didn't look closely enough. So it becomes this work causing stress. Actually, it's not work causing stress. It is thoughts or thought processes or fears or expectations that are triggering stress. It's not exactly the work, right? It's the thing that goes on in your head that triggers it. The actual work is just work. There's only that much you can do, right? So it is all the thought processes that centers around all these things that drives the stress and then reinforces it, then it goes down this negative spiral. Once you recognize it, you realize that, hey, why are all these things playing tricks on me? Some of these things actually nothing to do with me. Why I can't help it anyway, So you just do what you can. It's like a student who's studying. Study so hard because I want to pass my exams. I want to make sure I pass my exams. I always say you cannot make sure you pass your exams. You only can do so much to try to make sure that your chances of passing are better. That's all you can do. Right? You cannot make sure that you will pass. You only can improve your chances of passing. Because there's so many factors. On that day, you can, you may be unwell, then you don't perform, then fail. Right? Or that day the paper come out something, then you didn't see one word and then you fail. Right? Is that because you're no good? No, why? Doesn't mean anything, right? It's just that you have to realize that you do not have complete control. The only thing you have a bit more control is your own mind. Beyond your own mind, actually you have so little control. right? You only improve your probability of success, but you do not actually ensure success or failure. So that is a thing that you perhaps can convince your friend, right? That you only improve the probability. So you do, in a way, you can say you do your due diligence. When you do your due diligence, okay lah, whatever lah, right? You just have to accept the outcome, right? In fact, this is very much a part of the causes of suffering, right? You talk about dukkha and all that, actually quite interesting. Most times people talk about dukkha, say craving, clinging, and all that, right? But craving and clinging or what, you see? Of course, we say, craving, clinging, to pleasure and all these things. But what exactly is it? It's actually expectations, right? It's actually clinging and craving to expectations. And expectations don't meet meet what you think it should be. Then of course you get very stressed, you're very upset, very unhappy lah. That's all there is to it, you see. So if you can recognize all these things in your own mind, then of course it's good lah. But anyway, long and short of it all, this friend of yours, if it's really, really so severe, if there's any opportunity, maybe go and take a break lah. Take a short break and then give yourself some time, quiet time to reflect on these things, Then maybe after that you come back refreshed and clearer, and then you will face the challenges in a different way lor. I hope I answered the question.
I think my Wi-Fi died for a while. You mentioned something about mindfulness. I think about maybe the second sentence or third sentence of the entire sharing.
I'm
Did
not sure where I left you.
Like now we have the recording. Maybe when we send out the link, then you can just
all right,
replay.
thank you so much.
Then anyway, Lionel, if you after you listen to it, you tell me if there are questions, you can always contact me lah.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Then I talk to you easier.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Hey, no problem.
Thank you.
Maybe Dr. Tan, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I used to recite a mantra while I'm doing things to practice mindfulness. So then I realized my focus is not on the doing things anymore. It's on the mantra. So I wonder, then I forgot while I'm reciting the mantra, then I forgot to do my things, Then I realized, am I practicing it correctly, my mindfulness?
Okay. Mantras is like your breath, It's good as an anchor point when you're not doing something. But when you're doing something, I don't think you should be doing that.
Okay.
Can you imagine you reciting a mantra and trying to cross a busy road? I wouldn't do that.
So I'm washing the dishes. Then I try to recite the mantra. Then I realized, I forgot to wash one bowl.
Yeah. You see, what you have done is that your mantra is now causing you to go into a one-pointed concentration type of thing. So everything else is excluded. You know what I mean? So so actually this is not good for the process lah. So you want to recite mantra practice similar to other types of concentration practices. Actually very good if you're not having anything active to do. In other words, use it as an anchor point. So okay, for example, say if you go out to work and then you're just walking on the street, right? You obviously have to avoid people and all that. But if of course you're just walking in the park or you have a long stretch, there's nobody, you want to just focus on your breath, you can. You want to focus on the mantra, you can. It's because you are substituting one repetitive task for another. That's all. You know what I'm saying? Right? But when you're actively doing something where you need processing, you cannot recite a mantra continuously because you are going to be, so the work that the dishwashing is actually a distraction. Right? Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I recite mantra even when I'm driving.
Be careful. Be driving, must remember what mindfulness is, be in the moment. You want to be in the moment. The object is not so important actually.
Okay.
The object can be anything. Even if your object is something, okay, you read the Satipatthana Sutta, the object sometimes is not exactly the most ideal, the most glorious, or the most wholesome, but you just notice it as it is and then let it go, knowing that this is the way it is. You notice, let it go. Notice, let it go. Note, let it go. Aware, let it go. That's all. Right? Yeah. So remember that mantra practices are good for anchoring. So they're
Okay.
anchoring practices. So they're like if you you focus on the point of your breath on your nose, the tip of your nose. That's also actually can be considered like a concentration practice, right? Yeah.
And
So when you
I think it helps me in being more aware of the emotion.
yeah.
Yes, it helps.
In fact, the emotional one is actually you just have to be present at all times, especially when you're dealing with people, because that's the most difficult actually. Because when you deal with people, it's interacting, right? So there's a lot of changes along the way, right? Everything is very very fluid, right? So trying to watch your thoughts before you do something or you say something is actually not so easy. But it's good practice to notice. Like in other words, before a word comes out, you better notice what's going on in there first. And then that this thoughts trigger this thing, this word will come out. And this word is sit in like that. And then I notice the fella's face. The fella's face is then then you note the face and then you process the information again. So it's like that kind of, how can I say, it's a live noting of things, right? In fact, in the sutta itself, it always describe mindfulness as like a watchman watching the gate, right, of the city, right? People walking past, in and out. I mean, he doesn't care the fellow wear a red dress, a blue pants or whatever, but he just knows them coming in, going out, coming in, going out, coming in, going out. But you notice everyone. You know what I mean? That's the more important thing, right? But the moment you notice it, red dress, you follow. The cutting is nice lah, long lah, short lah, whatever lah, then no more mindfulness already lah. Then you've gone somewhere else already. Because your job is just to note it. So if a thought comes out like say for example a thought like the emotion of like pleasant, okay, just pleasant, okay, yeah, and then let it pass. Actually, the problem with all this mindfulness practice is that most people don't realize that very frequently people don't how can I say, some of the more modern ways of looking at it, say, oh, you might experience the emotion, feel this and that, actually missing the point. Not from a Buddhist standpoint, at least. I don't know what mindfulness that is, but not from a Buddhist standpoint. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No
Actually,
problem.
just now you were talking about this tracing back, right? I think the best situation to do this practice is to be aware where you park your car in the shopping mall. I ever spent 2 hours looking, oh my God.
Yeah. So maybe just slow 1 second down, the moment you park your car, you look at the wall.
Yes.
Take note, right? Walk few steps, take note the lift, which lift, that's mindfulness, right?
but I still don't trust my mindfulness. So what I do is I use my handphone, I take picture.
But I mean, okay lah, you can always reinforce it, but anyway, it's practice make perfect lah. Just keep going. I mean, I have to admit sometimes car parks are quite tough lah, because of them they all look the same. If you didn't look at the pillar, and then if you look at the pillar, I remember it's H something, but how do I get to hit something? Because you went in from this exit, you came out from the other side, right? Sometimes the buildings are like that. Yeah, okay. So, but you, as a kid, as I said, you shouldn't hammer yourself over it, because end of the day, there's only that much you can control, right? And there are so many variables. But as long as you are in the moment, that's the important part of the mindfulness practice. Yeah, more than anything else. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any more questions?
Yeah. Any more questions?
Anything, just fire.
Hi, I have a question. Whoops. Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
I'm Rachel.
Hey,
I was
yes,
wondering, following up on her point, a long time ago, I attended a Dharma talk where a nun asked us to notice whether, as we were listening to her speak, whether we were still breathing consciously. So that really made me think. And as I was listening to you, I was trying to focus on my breathing, and I felt that it helped me concentrate a bit better. So do you think there is a contrast between mantra chanting and the breath and do you consider like Zoom Dharma talks doing nothing? Because I'm not like physically processing with regards to being mindful. Because I find that when I listen to Zoom talks, my mind tends to wander, and then with the screen, my friends and I think we have a tendency to want to like chat or like at the beginning when I first came in, it was very hard to settle down. But yeah, so I just wanted to know your thoughts on, do you think there's a difference between mantra chanting and focusing on your breath with in talks, or do you think it depends on the situation? Yeah, thank you.
Hey, no problem. Okay, first of all, Zoom I think is a very new thing. So to be fair, I mean it's really, not for this last 2-3 years, we wouldn't be having this. Yeah, and I honestly feel that from a more practical standpoint, Zoom meetings are not quite the same as in-person meetings. Right? Yeah, because especially if there's highly complex things to discuss, right? Where difficult decisions have to be made with multiple factors, and also you need to assess emotional sort of responses and all that. It's very tough, It's still it's quite unreal actually. Right? It's actually quite unreal. So okay, but that's we can't help it, right? That's the way it is. So we just have to live with it. But in general, I will say that trying to be mindful of breath and listening to a talk at the same time is a tough call, right? It's not much different from doing a mantra, but there's a slight difference because the breath is actually a more dynamic object. If you notice, the breath actually is a very dynamic object. Okay, mantra is your mind focusing on 1,000 apples. Okay, your breath is not exactly 1,000 apples. Your breath comes and goes, rises and falls, and then in between you hear a word, hear a sentence, and then you figure it out, and then you go back to your breath again. So your breath is a background anchoring, which you allow the voice of the speaker to interrupt, right? And then if you can just focus straight away to the speaker and then whatever is being said, and when the speaker stops, you go back to the breath. That's fine. Okay. Similarly, if you say mantra, if you can really do mantra and then wash your plate, then go wash your plates, but you can't, right? Because both are concurrently, right? So that one you can't really do it, you see. But with your breath, you can actually shift your focus very easily. Because mantra, you'll be forcing yourself to push your mantra all the way through. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
There's a slight difference, So what you're doing is actually like if you sit in meditation, for example, you're sitting in meditation, and then you're focusing on your breath. Then thoughts arise, feelings arise. You hear a loud bang somewhere, there's a sound, and you notice the sound. Then the moment it's gone, you go back to your breath. You realize that? That's what people do, right? That's fine. That's totally fine because you are in the present. But when you're actually doing mantra, actually the thing that you're supposed to be in the present is supposed to be that mantra. And nothing else. That means an interruption of the mantra is a break of concentration. So you don't want to do that, right? So you keep on forcing it, and that's why you don't know what you're doing in the washing. So there's a small little difference in the technique, although is in a way same but different, if you know what I'm trying to say here.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much. It's interesting. I mean, just a short comment, because I think when you spoke about the word processing, it made me think of my dyslexic students, because like when they can read fluently, they might still have a difficult, like they spend so much of their brain power processing the reading, they cannot comprehend. So like, so it's quite interesting. But thank you. Thanks for the explanation. Appreciate it.
No problem. I mean, I think that applies to a lot of us actually, you'll be surprised, that this processing thing. Okay, I can give you a very simple thing. Like for example, we are like, for myself, I mean, we are English ed, right? English ed means we read in English, we think in English. So you ask me to read in Chinese, I can read Chinese, no, but I have to translate to English first. Okay, so there's a bit of a lag time, You realize that there's a lag time, so it's very hard to be present in a sense, and that's why there's a delay in the processing. So if I read a sentence in Chinese, it takes me a fraction of a second longer before I can comprehend, right? It's like your dyslexic student, because you are not present, because you are processing another step. That means there's a delay. If you're truly present, like you think in English, everything is fluent in English, so it will be just real time. Everything is real time. That one, there's always a delay. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even for students with speech delays, like even if they are English ed, sometimes they have speech and language issues. They have to see an SLT, right? It's because of the same issues. But very interesting. Thank you.
No problem. Anything else you'd like that?
Dr. Kenneth Tan. Can I ask you, actually I practice mindfulness, right? Let's say I focus on my breath, right? I can be calm, but then I realize that after like if we don't practice mindfulness, right, then after that we become anxious already. So so how to like because when I practice mindfulness, when I focus on my breath, right, I can be calm. But if you don't practice, right, if I don't practice, right, like is it, let's say in daily situation, right, I will not be as calm as when I was like doing the mindfulness practice.
Okay, so what exactly the mindfulness practice that you do? You say your breath. You sit down quietly in a place to just watch your breath.
Focus on my breath. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so actually what you're doing, must remember when you focus your breath, two things are possible. One is a mindfulness practice, two is a concentration practice. Okay, so as you know, the breath is quite versatile depending on how you focus your breath. So do you actually focus on the breath rising and falling, or do you actually focus the breath at one point, a contact point? So there is a difference.
At one point, at the nostrils.
Precisely. So it's at one point, right? So
Yeah.
your practice is almost like a mantra practice also, because what happens is that you are actually suppressing all the anxiety and everything else. You know what I'm saying? Because you're doing a concentration practice. There is mindfulness involved. As I say, concentration is actually just repeated mindfulness on the same object. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. But because of that, you will find that within the practice itself, you are always very calm because you are suppressing hindrances. You know, the suppression is actually very strong. But the moment you stop that, right, now you like let your fences down, you let your fences down. So then suddenly everything becomes again very random, very and you will find that you find it difficult to keep track of everything, right? So that is why both of them have their own pros and cons, right? So but the fact that you do concentration and you find that your mind is peaceful and calm is actually very, very good. It tells me that
but
your
it's not
concentration.
really
Yeah. But I mean to some extent, but at least you get less
to some
anxiety.
extent,
So actually you should just carry on in your practice there, but maybe you allow yourself a small modification. Maybe you should try to, instead of making it static at one point, maybe you should try to let your breath focus on the breath in a more dynamic manner. Let it go in, move out, move in. That means you feel the breath going in, breath going out, breath going in, breath going out. And if thoughts come in, you just take note of them. All right. You just hi, bye. Okay. Hi, bye, go. You know what I mean? So you let your mind get used to the idea of a more dynamic process of awareness rather than just one pointed. Because one pointed is very good for suppressing, but not very good when you get out of the state. You don't have that protection anymore. But if you get used to the, you know what I'm trying to say? Right? Yeah, okay. So that's basically what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Anything else? Anybody?
Any more questions?
Any more questions? Can always think of some more questions. Cannot finish today, next week also can.
Brother Kenneth. Not a question, but just want to say thank you because
no problem.
You share about how there are many factors affecting how an outcome comes to be. I was very distraught by one of my patients who passed away. Yeah. Then I think just now you say was also like you put so much importance on yourself, you think that you can really. Do you think you really can cause someone to die? Okay, I mean yes, can, but there are many factors involved.
Yeah.
They're very helpful for me. Yeah.
I think because you see, we unfortunately we only recognize a lot of these things somewhere in your life that when something happens and you might recognize it. For us as doctors, is especially when you're young, and you're just coming out and all that. When something happens, you always say, "Oh no, how could I have prevented?" Of course, yeah, you have to go and review. I agree, it's important, right? That's why we have what we call mortality meetings. We review all that has happened to the patient, where we could have been improved, or something missed and all that. But interestingly, you will find that about 99% of the time, actually nothing could have been different, right? Patient would have died anyway. You know what I'm saying, right? And that actually hits the reality will hit you, right? That actually you do so little actually. Correct or not? You actually do very little, you know, because you think you do a lot and you think you control the whole thing. Actually, you're not controlling anything. You're only controlling such a small part of the patient's well-being, right? Not to say that it's not important. It is important because every part is important, right? Maybe like we always say about the last straw that breaks the camel's back. You don't want to be the last straw, lah, right? But you must remember it takes more than a camel, lah, you know, right? So you just have to be aware that. But because the problem is that today a lot of people very how can I say, we are all tend to be control freaks, lah. You know, we think that we can control the entire universe, you know, right? Maybe it's a very Western thing, I don't know, because you look at a lot of the big tech thing, you know, they think they can rule the universe by you know, I know everything, you know, big tech, I can do I can have the one that I always laugh at is of course the AI lah. It's actually very funny. You know, oh, all this in the news, AI will replace doctors, will replace lawyers and all that. I say, please lah, maybe not in my lifetime lah, but maybe in the future, I don't know, but not my lifetime. There's more to it, okay? Because they assume that it is only one factor, right? They have forgotten there's so many other things that you need to put a situation into place, and whether the situation is going to turn out successful or unsuccessful, it takes more than just one thing. All right. So just let's not kid ourselves. All right. Everything is interdependent, and let's not forget that. Right. Yeah. So what we credit ourselves as being the sole factor, well, we are probably 1 or 2%. Right. The whole universe is so big. Anything else that I can?
Right.
Yeah,
Doctor, can I have another question?
Sure.
Formerly at the talk with the Buddhist Fellowship, you spoke about a sutta where it was like a flow chart where you think about only when something is beneficial, then you speak. The one about where it's true, yeah. So I found that was very useful for my students. They actually could understand it. So where can I actually source for more areas like this? Where can I look for it? Such that I can create this information, yeah.
Oh, I really can't think of any way in particular, because the Buddhist teachings, unfortunately, is all scattered everywhere, you know, bits and pieces are everywhere. I think recently in our medical Dharma circle, I think somebody circulated something about when to say something, right? I think you remember. See whether we can find that and maybe we can forward to you.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Yeah, because somebody circulated a reference and some things about that. Yeah, but I think like all things in the Buddhist arena, actually, you'll find that it's just a mindset shift, you know. It's a mindset shift, right? And the general principles have always been very simple. There's an ideal one. Of course, if ideal, everybody good, like everybody happy, right? And then there's a slightly less than ideal, a compromise situation. And then the worst case scenario is that it's really not solvable. It's just not solvable, you know, that kind of thing. So there are times when it really not meant to be said, lah, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, but in general, the principle is very simple. It's based on actually the understanding that every action is actually triggered by a mental process. That's why mindfulness is important, right? Because before any action, there's a mental process. And for the action to be triggered, usually there's an input to trigger the action. That means, in other words, there must be some sensory input, some thought process that may be based on previous imprints, right? Then it will trigger the action. And then when the action comes about, the action has to be willed. In other words, the action is not a reflex, right? A lot of these actions are not reflexes. So it has to be willed. That means there's a conscious effort to do something. Okay. Once you make a conscious effort to do something, then you will have to plan. That means other further thoughts will come into play. That means you plan how to carry it out, whether by body, speech, or mind, whichever way it is. And then finally, you will actually carry out the action, right? And to complete the action, there must be an outcome, right? There must be some sort of outcome. That means there must be a target to do it to. That means there must be somebody, something to do it to, and then there's an outcome, where it turns out well, turns out badly, or neutral, correct? So you can see in this whole process, the the one that you can have some control over is at the earliest point is actually your intention. Your intention that drives the action. That's the one that you can control. But beyond that, actually, once you've already done that, how the action turns out or how the action is carried out, it's no longer just determined by your intention anymore. It becomes more determined by other circumstantial things, right? Like the best of intentions can produce very bad results, you know, right? And also sometimes bad intentions have unintended good results, okay, right? But all those things you can't control. Those are, as you see, of the many steps of an action until the final completion of the action, you realize you only take one small, I mean, at best maybe 10-20% of it is under some control of your, of your volition or your will, right? The rest of it is not. The rest you can't. So what would determine, for example, an action, how well the action is likely to turn out? It's a combination of knowledge, how you want to get the action done, and also a combination of wisdom. Because your wisdom will be able to guide you as to how you can foresee the outcome, right? That one, there's no way of knowing otherwise, right? So a wise person can do something that is simple, that seemingly doesn't have a direct impact on the outcome, but yet the outcome is correct or the outcome is good, right? It's just like a very experienced, say, for example, surgeon, right? He doesn't have to go through 10,000 different steps to get the same endpoint as a very new surgeon who goes by the book and follows every step from A to Z. You see, so this is the same. So a skilled person or a person with wisdom will be able to see the endpoint that is desired and will know how to maneuver it or know how to do all the shortcuts to get there. You see, whereas a person who's very good intention but very unwise, you do something but actually the outcome turns out bad because he cannot foresee the outcome. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Yeah. So being able to foresee the outcome of the action and the whole chain of events that lead to the end product, that requires wisdom. So intention drives the action, but wisdom completes it and helps to determine the most ideal outcome.
Got it. Ken.
Got it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
No problem. This Zoom meeting I always find very difficult. You know why? I don't know where to look. At least I have an iPad. It's not so bad, no. If I use if a screen and I have to look at, like, for example, another slide or something, my eyes is my friend keeps on telling me, can you just look at the camera? Can you stop looking away from the camera? Some people are very natural on Zoom. Anything else? If not, we'll save more for next round.
Yeah. Any more question? Otherwise, then.
In fact, you can. In fact, for the next round, you can also maybe just put together the questions, some of the questions you have.
Yeah.
Then we can deal with it also. Then, because the next round, I mean, I have only one thing in mind that I want to say, actually. Yeah. One aspect of mindfulness I want to discuss.
Okay. Those who have questions can actually send into the WhatsApp chat.